Hello and welcome back to Traitor Talk. Against all the odds, I am joined by Rick.
Big up.
Connor.
All right.
And Luke.
Yo, yo.
So the first thing I'd like to address today is Connor's rogue editing of the show. If you listen to episode 2, you might have thought that my intro didn't actually make any sense and was utter nonsense. Well, I sent Connor a voice note telling him to cut it out, and anyone else would have cut it out without having to listen to it. Connor didn't hear my voice note, and he just went through the episode, heard the absolute nonsense I said, and thought, that makes perfect sense. Leave it in. For anyone that's wondering, here is the intro in question. I also, if you listened to last week's episode, you might have heard us say things along the line of, Connor, you've been saying that, but you've been saying we should cut Luke's stuff all episode, and you won't have heard that in the episode. That's because of the sheer volume of content we had to cut for Luke. Luke said some things last week that we're not going to repeat, but it was horrendous. So that was that. And whilst I'm calling out podcast members, Luke went ahead and watched episode 5. So today he's banned from making any predictions on what's going to happen in the next episode. I'm also really scared, Luke, that I'm just going to say like a prediction that I'm like, oh, I'm so confident about that prediction, and just see your screen with your eyes really wide.
I've got some really good predictions, actually. I've got some really good ones.
Oh, for episode 5, yeah, mate, I bet they're spot on.
Yeah, spot on, pal.
Luke, what possessed you to watch episode 5?
Yeah, what was going through your head there, lad?
Don't know.
Hey, come on. I couldn't believe it when he said he watched that.
I couldn't. I was shocked.
Yeah.
Treacherous.
I think he fully knew. He fully knew he wasn't supposed to. He fully knew.
Honestly, I didn't. Didn't at the time.
Probably, I reckon you just raged at that cliffhanger and was just like, that's bollocks.
It wasn't a fucking cliffhanger, though, was it?
He's like, did you have to know what happened next?
Oh, I wonder what happened.
Hey, well, you know, so don't guess.
Well, yeah, let's just get straight into the episode then. I say straight into the episode. We've been talking for 2 minutes.
Jake, should we just give a shout out to our one fan that we have, Hot Yogurt?
Oh, two fans.
2 fans, go on.
This is just a shout out to Hot Yogurt on Reddit for her comment.
Hot Yogurt 503.
503 said that she finds the podcast hilarious. Oh, is it weird that I know she's a she?
How do you know she's a she? Yeah, that is.
I went onto her profile to see what else she was up to. I was like,
yogurt.
what's our demographic? We're also going to give a shout out to Jimmy Jarvis. Big fan of the show. Listen to every episode. Thank you, Jimmy, for your continued support.
That's got to be a fake name.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Hot Yogurt's something, but Jimmy Jarvis.
Yeah, that's a load of bollocks, that.
Bollocks.
Ain't no one walking around with that for a name.
What kind of mum would name their kid Jimmy when the last name is Jarvis?
God, it must be that parent. Who is that? Who's the parent?
Oh, scumbag. Okay, let's get straight into the notes. My first note is Anthony votes for Brian and ruins my good time.
Anthony.
Yeah, thanks for correcting Jake there. It's been doing my edit.
He needs to be corrected.
Is his name not Anthony? It's Anthony.
No, sir, it's Anthony.
He's not got an H in there.
It does, but it's pronounced Anthony.
His family might be listening to this, so you'll be pissing him off every time that you mispronounce his name. So it's Anthony.
In terms of what I've said about him, his name pronunciation will probably piss him off the least.
I've never pronounced it Anthony in any regard. I don't think.
My uncle was called Anthony. We called him Anth for short.
Anth?
Uncle,
What the
Uncle
fuck's
Anth.
that?
Yeah, I know. I grew up. I never knew the word Anthony. I didn't realise that was a name because I just always do my Uncle Anth. But
Anth? That's weird, man.
Yeah, sorry to the family of, how do you say it? Anthony?
Correct.
Anthony.
Yeah, so Anthony votes for Brian, ruins my good time. Gutted to see that happen.
Brian says that he's been voted out for being who he is.
Yeah.
He obviously still thinks you just get voted out if you're voted the biggest sheep.
Yeah.
Unless who he is just an absolute jittering mess. But it's just such a change. Do you remember in the first episode where he started barking those orders? I don't think we spoke enough about that last podcast because he's just come across as so confident.
Yeah, I gave him so much credit for being like assertive and dominant and just the way he went about it. And he turns out he's an absolute pussy, like.
Because he came across as a reluctant leader. Like, it's like, I didn't want to have to take charge, but somebody had to. And that was me.
I was going to say, if you look back to our episode 1, when you were like, "Oh, he wanted to take charge. That's what he's like all the time." Well, you were fucking wrong, weren't you?
I was wrong. I was very wrong. Put my hands up. I like that as well. He says, "I don't take it personal, but I'm kind of gutted for being voted for who I am." Sounds like you've taken it extremely personally. And immediately, Harry looks terrified, palpable fear, which I don't think comes across as guilt. I think Harry's starting to just look very emotionally affected by everything that's going on. Luckily, like I say, it doesn't come across as guilt. But for a man that's been to war, he is terrified of facing Ash.
So, yeah, Harry, like you say, Jake, does absolutely look like he's shitting his pants. Just having to meet Ash later on in the tower. But he doubles down straight away on Ash. And when Brian gets revealed as faithful, he's like, "It's so obvious, man." And he's holding Ash's name in front of him. And Ash is still there. How he's going to have the balls to face Ash later on?
I know. Well, Paul does a similar double down thing where Johnny says to him, "Oh, back to the drawing board then." And then Paul just goes, "No, I think we were close then." And Ash walks past and they both just stare at her.
Ash is so dumb. I can't stress it enough. Like, she's still somehow trusting of Harry and Paul in some regard, which is bizarre. Like, what is wrong with that woman? She's played the game so bad from start to finish, and obviously we all know it's a finish.
She said she was blindsided by what's happening. I've got in my notes, a Boeing 747 could blindside Ash.
Would you like that little where Harry gives her a hug and she like looks him in the eye and says, "We'll talk later." In front of everyone as well.
Yeah, that's how shit she is.
She is so bad, isn't she?
She's
so
so bad.
It's so pointed and so obvious.
Yeah, I mean, Harry got away with one there, really. No one twigged on.
I think Harry does. I think he might feel a little bit bad, but who doesn't feel bad is Paul. That evil laughing in the talking head when he says he's going to have to talk to Ash later. He is loving every minute he's in there.
And he relishes it. You can see it in the tower. Just before we go on to the tower, Diane had quite a quiet episode. So I've only got one chance to bitch about her, I think. So I just want to get that out of the way.
Get it in there, yeah.
It pisses me off how confident she's just, okay, if I go tonight, here are your traitors. Ash, Megan, Anthony. Like, okay, you got Ash because, oh my God, anyone could get Ash. There's just a confidence, like she has any idea what's going on.
Yeah, and Ross just does not buy it at all, which I enjoy.
Yeah, he says he don't agree with any of those names, but then does end up relenting on Ash and says, "Oh, Ash, actually." So, yeah, he is a bit more switched on. But how suspicious did it look when those two are whispering in the kitchen and then Charlie walks by and sees them whispering? At least I think it was Charlie.
It could have been either, honestly.
I've got one of those blonde women.
I rewound about 4 or 5 times. I think it's Charlie, but it could have been either.
What accent did she have?
She doesn't say that much, and there's bonging and there's nervous laughter. It was hard to, and when I say bonging, the clock was bonging, and there was nervous laughter. It was hard to get a read on who that was. I think Charlie.
Yeah, I've got Charlie after I put one of those blonde women.
I forget Charlie's existence. Whenever I see a chubby blonde, I always think of Evie.
No, I think you're mistaking Charlie for Evie then, because Evie does nothing.
It was Evie that fell in the challenge, right? Fell in the water. Yeah. That was her best moment.
I thought Craig Charles were about to call her a wazzock.
Wazzock. You wazzock.
Little Takeshi's Castle reference, Connor. I can see you looking confused there.
What, you never watched Takeshi's Castle?
Yeah, but who's Craig, whatever?
Craig Charles.
Oh, mate.
Connor,
Oh, Rick. Is that from a Red Dwarf?
Yeah.
Why do you ask Rick everything?
We were talking about Red Dwarf the other day, man.
Feel like you're his carer sometimes, Rick.
I know, I feel like that sometimes.
I need help in this life, you know?
So, when they get to the tower, and Paul's like, some Ash, "You okay?"
Yeah.
That made me laugh.
He does not give a fuck.
He does not care at all.
I'll be honest, though, the reveal, you know, when they finally took the hoods off, I was dreading it. I was dreading that moment, watching it, because of how painful it'd be. But it wasn't as painful as I thought it'd be to watch.
Because of just how much of a psychopath Paul is. Just makes it easier, doesn't he?
Yeah, but he does give a good, decent defence for why he turns What are you, Luke? Are you desperate to talk about Harry's defence?
Yeah. The best thing about Harry's defence is he just didn't mean a word of it as well, which makes it even funnier. Like, I think Harry played the game better because Paul said something, not even to like blindside her. He said something to actually make sense of the reason he voted. Harry didn't. Harry chatted absolute bollocks and just betrayed her again anyway. So Harry's the better traitor, man. The way he went about that was so funny.
Yeah, we were so wrong about him from episode 1, weren't we? So wrong.
Yeah, Harry's killing it.
He really is.
Harry says, I knew Brian would go in, so I voted for you to just throw people off the set a little bit.
Bollocks!
The worst part about it is Ash is like, yeah, okay, yeah. She's like, well, I'd still have you back in the future. I still trust you.
Nuts, innit? Nuts.
I suppose she kind of has to. Imagine lying to everyone all day, and then you're supposed to have this little team who you can confide in at night. And they've just thrown you under the bus. She's got absolutely no friends in there.
Rick, say if me and you were both in there, yeah? Both in the show, and I was a traitor, you were a faithful, I'd still be asking you for help.
I know from playing Risk with Rick that that'd be a bad move.
Yeah, I definitely think I could use that.
Connor, you'd be like Rick's wet dream.
Pause.
So Ash said something as well that kicks off a theme for me in this episode. So she says she's pissed off because the traitors need to work together. And that confirms to me that she never watched the last series of The Traitors. And people do a few things in this episode where I'm like, have you seen the previous series?
I do agree with her, though. We'll get into it more, but I really don't think there's much benefit in going so hard on another traitor like they do. We'll talk about it at the banishment more, I think.
But that's just because it failed. If it had worked, that would have been good.
I mean, tonight.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
So should we move on to picking the 4 that condemned?
So Claudia walks in, tells them there's going to be no murder tonight. Instead, they condemn 4 people to a dungeon where they're not going to be able to speak to anyone all day, not going to be participating in the challenge, and will just come out in time for banishment. and of those 4 people, it has to be one of them who gets murdered the following night.
I think they made a mistake, a massive mistake, a terrible decision. Like, surely they were aware of the problem that could have happened by putting 2 traitors in the dungeon. And why they even... I mean, I think it must have been Paul's doing, because he had his master plan and he was so confident it was going to happen. So I feel like it must have been his plan. And I feel like he's just getting way too ahead of himself in the past couple of episodes. He's trying to do really pinpoint strategy decisions, and it's just a bit too much. Just play it a bit simple. Take a touch, put it in the net. He's trying to first time it all the time. This
episode was the death of Paul for me. I think, based on this episode, it's impossible for him to be in the final. There's no way he can survive every banishment. Because he says, so getting voted as popular puts a target on his back. So being put in the dungeon plays? No, it doesn't. Stop attracting attention. He's doing himself in because he's loving just being at the center of it all. And it's going to fuck him. He does it a few times in this episode. It's not playing well. It's not playing well at all.
Yeah, I think he definitely did watch last season, and I think he's trying to have a crazy Wilf moment every episode. He wants to just evade it every single time. And if he's masterminded it, it looks smart, but it doesn't work well for the end game. It doesn't work well for the long term, because eventually they'll just go out. We'll just choose you now because you just seem to be at the forefront of everyone's mind.
So, if you're such a good traitor, Luke, what does he do then to rectify this?
What does he do? Are we talking about...
Oh, what would you do if you were in his shoes now? How would you change this about so you could survive?
Are we at what point in time am I as Paul?
The what should I say, Rick?
Stop, Jay.
I think we're best off talking about this moment in time we're talking about now. So who would you have put in the dungeon?
I think the Ash one was a good shout because they got Ash to do it and convinced her it was her idea.
Yeah.
Fucking amazing. She's a moron.
She's the stupidest contestant.
She's sat there like, yeah, I think I need to be like, what are you? And I think Miles is even part of that plan as well, because he said like, if you feel comfortable to it, if you feel comfortable to it, Ash, do it. And I think this is how they didn't need to have the conversation, because they were all thinking the same thing, and they all knew what was happening, but Ash was completely none the wiser. So putting Ash in there works. I don't completely hate the putting Paul in there. I hate it from the standpoint of it gives the possibility that there could be 2 traitors left in the dungeon, which is a problem. But I don't hate it from the standpoint of how he wanted his master plan to work. Just don't pick someone as likable as Andrew, because he's. I mean, Johnny was technically second most popular, but Andrew's probably third. So just pick someone that Paul was a bit more confident in that he was going to get picked over.
I wouldn't have put a single traitor in there.
I'd do the same, because you're always going to get. I don't mind Ash though.
Oh yeah, but I mean, if I was Ash should not have gone into that dungeon. That's why she's out.
Yeah, you just get scrutinised too much being in there in order for it to be worth it to put yourself in as a traitor. Paul says it's a double bluff putting himself in there, because it's so obvious that a traitor would put himself in there that then a traitor wouldn't put themselves in there because it'd be too obvious. So he thinks that it alleviates suspicion for him. It's such a stretch. He's overthought it far too much. And meanwhile, everyone's up top is just like, well, of course there's a traitor in there, maybe 2.
I've also got on Paul that, because obviously a lot of people are saying he is actually a psychopath, and he must be to opt into spending a day with Ash in the dungeon.
And Andrew, after he'd pissed him off at the round table the other day. I thought Paul would be in there fashioning a shiv.
Oh, if Andrew just tortured a confession out of him.
They end up making mates in there, don't they?
I think they've got it wrong just across the board, because I think now we're looking at a very likely situation that of the 4 that go into the dungeon, Ash and Paul are the first to go out. I think Andrew's probably proved himself clear now. Well, we'll talk about it later. Meg's still in contention, but there's a very real possibility that Paul goes before even Meg. So they've just put themselves in the firing line.
Jake.
No, there isn't, Jake.
Jake,
Meg's gone.
Meg's gone. What are you on about?
Oh yeah, mathematically, yeah, she has to.
It's said explicitly.
Yeah. But even so, I mean, and now I'd just be, look, if I was a faithful, I'd just be like, why hasn't Paul been murdered yet? I'd be straight on him.
Luke, explain to Connor why Meg's gone.
Is Connor confused?
Did you see his face?
Connor, do you actually not get it?
Explain what you're talking about.
Oh, I love you, Connor. You're so funny. There were 4 in the dungeon, weren't there, Connor?
Yeah.
Andrew, one of them has to get murdered. Andrew gets saved, so he can't get murdered. Ash gets banished. So now it's only Meg and Paul, and you can't murder a traitor, so it has to be Meg. Why are you so confused still?
Oh my god.
Oh, I didn't know that was that's what the dungeon meant. So what, in episode 5?
You didn't know that's what the dungeon meant?
Have you watched the episode?
No, we'll cut this, yeah.
No, we
Leave
won't.
it in.
No,
So the point of that dungeon was that, okay. So when we watch episode 5, they're going to do their murder, and they have no choice but to pick Meg.
Yeah.
All right, okay. So her time's over now then? Her time is over now?
The time
Yes,
is over.
yes.
Yeah, at the end of the episode. Yeah.
Guaranteed?
She don't know. Imagine
Mathematically, mate. I think out of everyone, I feel like she must have been reasonably confident she was going to survive as well, really, because no one was really suspecting Paul at that point. So I think she thought Paul was going. Everyone seems to think Paul's going.
I think she just might be a bit fed up with the game. She's never really.
I feel for her.
Yeah.
I feel for her in the sense this like to go in this way would be rough. She'll realise once she gets out and watches it, but you'd hate to go when it was just a mathematical, you know what I mean, just the way it fell at that time, you know what I mean. She wasn't going to get murdered. It wasn't planned for her to get murdered.
The plan was to murder Andrew, yeah?
So she just got really unlucky. It was all about who won that challenge, which is a shame for her. That's what I feel for her.
I don't feel for Meg.
Heartless.
I think she's played a bad game. And when she's in the dungeon, she just goes, doesn't this solidify that we're faithfuls? And I've put, seriously, has anybody watched this show before?
Andrew has, because he says, I don't know, really.
No, she was very badly qualified to be in this show in the first place, wasn't she?
She was.
And she seems to think she's smarter than she is.
Don't we all?
Yeah, I don't think she realizes that she's not played a good game.
So they all find out at breakfast. What the first thing I noted about breakfast was when Charlotte goes in, she runs straight to Anthony for a big hug. We've got him all wrong. He's an absolute ladies' man.
He's an absolute player.
To be fair, I think he looks like a charmer. Yeah, what a turnaround. I do. I think he's absolutely sound. Whilst all this is going on and at breakfast as well, we're starting to see, they've not come together yet, but they're both pointing in the same direction. Zach and Jazz team up on Paul, which I'm all for. Jazz, this episode starts to come through as my favourite faithful, definitely. And the first faithful across either season where I thought, yeah, that's how a faithful should be going about it. He's reinventing the game.
Yeah, because he knows Paul's suspicious, but he knows not to just blurt it out to everyone.
Yeah.
He tells certain people.
Why shouldn't you blurt it out to everybody?
Because then because he doesn't want Paul to know that he doesn't want Paul to know early on that he's suspecting him, because then he's primed for a murder, isn't he?
Because he's saying this before they know about the dungeon and the fact that Paul ain't going to get to speak to people, because he tells Harry, and I was wondering, is Harry going to tell Paul? But it all becomes redundant, because the next time Harry will get a chance to chat to Paul is at the banishment anyway, and of course Paul knows then that Jazz suspects him because Jazz brings it up at the banishment.
I think Jazz is playing a pretty smart game so far. I feel like he's going for the pounce. So far, it seems like it's coming at the right time. But I've always thought as a faithful, I'd try and just seem dumb.
I thought we established you do a bad job of that. You'd get wound up when people say dumb things. You can't agree with dumb things.
It depends. No, I mean, I'd want to seem dumb at finding traitors. I wouldn't want to seem dumb in general because I couldn't do that. But if I went about traitor detection terribly, like a Tracy, do you know what I mean? I feel like that puts you in a position where why would you kill that person? What's the point?
Yeah, Charlotte says in this episode, and Ross, that Paul's 100% faithful. I still don't understand why anyone would ever say that. That's such a dumb sentence. No one's 100% faithful. Especially when Meg, obviously, I made the mistake earlier, but now we know Meg mathematically is getting voted out. Why on earth, if you're going to murder someone, why would you murder Meg when she already had people looking at her quite a lot more than Paul? And she was doing a bad job of defending herself. Paul was at least defending himself. I think it's going to be very hard to convince anyone that Paul's not the traitor, I think, after Meg goes.
Yeah, I think so too. And yeah, it's just another reason why putting himself in the dungeon was a bad shout, because he's not out there to defend himself, and momentum's just growing. I think Harry tries a little bit to deflect away from Paul. He says when they're all outside, he says when they're talking about Paul, he says, I just think the people who I can trust right now, I don't want to start thinking about whether it's them or not. And I think he's referring to Paul there. And he tries to deflect some attention onto Meg, saying she's capable of being... He says, I think's capable of being a traitor? Meg. And someone goes, who? And he goes, Meg. So it's good to know that it's not just a bad edit. They don't even fucking know who she is. It's not just us.
That's hilarious. I didn't clock that. I've just got one more note before the challenge. So Ross says that he never thought Sonia was a traitor and that he intentionally got her out, which I do not buy at all. I think he was just playing the game very simply. He used very sound logic, and he's starting to act like he's a master manipulator. And you know what? I've gone off Ross for that. I think he's trying to impress his mum.
Yeah, if he really thought Sonia was that observant, then he's just full-on betrayed the other traitors, the other faithfuls, by voting her out, because she'd have been an amazing asset. If he thought she was capable of sniffing out their relationship, she'd be equally as good at sniffing out traitors.
And also, if he thought Sonia was good at anything, which she proved not to be, he's also a fucking idiot.
Do you know in their talking head as well, there was a slight hint. Who was it? Was it Diane or Ross that said that, when they're talking to them, they're just taking it for granted that they're not a traitor?
Ross says that they haven't confirmed it to each other.
Do you reckon, have they ever done it in season 1 where, would you ever get another traitor added to the roster now?
Yeah, It does happen. Yeah.
Hey, Luke, I didn't need you answering that. I reckon it happens in episode 5. Luke, spoiling episode 5. What, Luke, does Diane or Ross become a traitor in episode 5?
Don't ask him that.
They do.
I'm not even looking at his screen. I don't want to see his reaction.
Oh my God. How are you even...
Don't react to him.
I'm not. I just like the fact that you're freaking out about that as a possibility.
This is what you'd be like on the round table. I'd suss you out straight away, mate. I could read you like a book.
Oh, Connor, you'd be so funny on a round table because you'd be rogue as shit.
He'd get me out.
I think Connor could convince me to vote for anyone just out of sheer. Go on, let's just do it and see.
Yeah, and you won't even think he was a traitor if he got it wrong. You'd just be like, well, yeah.
Well, I was going off nothing, to be fair.
Just Connor. Yeah.
We should actually do a game in a group of it. I'm sure we can find a way.
We've watched every episode twice and made very thorough notes on it. Surely we're very well equipped to do a game.
Well, I've been keeping a secret since episode 1. I'll reveal it on our last episode.
What?
Wait, what? What did you say?
He says as he takes a toke on the vape.
I'll say that's all I'll say for now.
Okay, so today's challenge, I was going to say faithfuls, but contestants were split into 2 teams. They had to get little nuggets of gold and take them across a rickety bridge and put them in some weighing scales. The winning team got to choose someone to save. Now, this was relevant because both Miles and Harry were on the same team. Jazz and Charlotte were captains. Now, am I missing something here? Because their first 2 picks were Charlie and Tracy. Harry's a soldier. Anthony was second to last. And the thing is, Harry's bossed every physical challenge. And he bosses this one. I just don't understand why you wouldn't pick Harry first. It's weird.
You see Anthony's face when he got picked second to last.
I know, he's hench.
What?
He's hench. Is that still a word? Look, people still say hench.
A bit.
Is it just me keeping it alive? What do they say now?
What's Leng? Is that something?
Do not say Anthony is Leng. Do not say Anthony is Leng. That is wild. Pause.
When he was picked, he just looked proper miserable. Just imagine getting picked last behind fucking cripple, behind a 50-year-old psychic woman, behind all these people.
Who was last?
Johnny.
Oh, he weren't behind the cripple. Cut that.
No, so Johnny was last. I thought I found it funny where he said, "Don't mind banging my head, don't mind cutting my arm, don't mind my leg falling off, don't bother me." I like that. That was, if you're gonna lose a leg, that's the best joke you can make.
Yeah, I feel like I'm starting to like Johnny more.
Fucking hell, you're joking, aren't you? You absolutely hate him.
I wouldn't go as far as saying I fully like him.
You called him a stupid freak.
Oh God, I did, didn't I?
You called him a bitch.
He was a bitch. He was being a bitch.
He was being a bitch.
But, I wouldn't go as far as saying I really like him or anything. But he's had a couple of funny moments. He barred at Brian, man.
That was funny. I've got my notes for this challenge are tiny. It's very straightforward. Not a lot happens. I got Miles' box instructions, Anthony, despite being shit.
God, Miles was awful, wasn't he?
Horrendous.
We spoke offline about possibly to make the trials a bit more exciting, having a separate pot for traitors, and the more that they can get the faithfuls to fail during these challenges, the more money they could raise in a traitor pot. Miles would have played an absolute blinder if that was his goal. Maybe he knows something we don't, because wow, he was shit. I don't think they never showed him getting across to put anything on the scales. You see him twice, and both times he falls in.
Well, I don't know, because I felt like that was edited weirdly, because you only see Harry make the trip once, but he does it with such ease, and he surely did it more than once.
Yeah, it was weird, wasn't it? Harry was clearly really good at it, and it was almost like he wasn't allowed to go again or something. It was so strange.
Yeah, it was a terrible challenge, as in entertainment. Well, maybe not entertainment value, but it was just a lazy challenge, wasn't it?
It was lazy. Yeah, my highlight was just watching Johnny literally throw himself to great effect.
Yeah, Johnny throwing and Evie falling were my highlights.
The only other thing I have to say on the challenge is Red obviously choose to save Andrew. Can't knock it. I think if I was a faithful, I mean, obviously I know who the traitors are, but I think Andrew's the one I would likely save.
Why?
Because I just Paul. I wouldn't at this point if I was a faithful. I'd just be so. Why is Paul at the center of everything? I'd have to go. Paul would be the person I'd probably vote for. Maybe not over Ash because Ash is so suspicious. I'd probably maybe suspect Meg because she does a bad job at defending herself. But Andrew's the only one I'm not currently looking at. I'd suspect them all. I think those are 4 suspicious people. Okay, so after the challenge, my first note, I mean, I mentioned it earlier in the podcast, is that Ross says Paul is 100% a faithful. I don't know how I just said faithful, but that is not how you say faithful. I'm going to take that again. So my first note after the challenge is what I've said previously, that Ross says Paul is 100% a faithful. I think that's very dumb. Charlie follows it up later in a different conversation with blatantly it's Paul. And I think the tide is turning. We'll talk about it later on at the banishment, but Paul's looking suspect, and that's starting to come through.
Can I pull you up on your pronunciation of faithful? Because it's been doing my head in all season that Harry cannot say faithful. Have you heard it? He says faithful, like one fateful night or something.
Well, growing up with tongue tie, faithful is a nightmare of a word for me. It's the THF sound followed by the actual F sound. It's a nightmare for boys with short tongues.
Go on, explain why you've got a short tongue, Jake.
I was born with my tongue connected to my gums. It's been rectified, and now I can speak normally. However, due to habits, like starting from when I was a kid, sometimes I will say stuff like mother or brother.
Yeah, Jake used to be a freak.
That could be your reveal at episode 4 of the Traitors. You reveal to everyone.
This guy's been a freak all this time?
Oh, we should have got him out day 1.
That surgery won't make you less of a freak, Jake.
Do you struggle to pleasure a woman with your short tongue, Jake?
No, because I've gone through therapy and my tongue is much longer than it used to be. And also, as we've discussed outside of the podcast, the nose can be used to remarkable effect.
Stop. Pause. That's the third pause and they've all been from Jake. The nose is... Let's just move on.
Genuinely, how did they lengthen your tongue?
No, so it's in my tongue. So I have a normal sized tongue, but it just didn't grow out the same way your guys'. So your tongue will be longer than it was when you were a kid, obviously. But mine just like stayed, so it kind of grew backwards in a sense. So I basically had to stick my tongue out for ages, like. You seeing that? You seeing that fucking distance?
Some length on that, actually. Fair play.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, some length on that.
Every morning, evening and night.
I mean, remember years ago, it used to be ridiculous. It hardly left his mouth.
I went years without seeing your tongue, Jake. Some good tongue talk there. Right, back to the Traitors.
Oh, also,
yeah.
I know you mentioned before, someone said traitor speak. They say traitor chat.
Oh.
Yeah, I know. It's like they're trying to avoid saying the one phrase.
We won't sue them. They don't need to worry about getting sued. They can say Traitor Talk on TV.
Hey, you talk. I'm fucking suing them. I'm suing them for not saying it. I'm starting to wonder as well if Jazz has just been kind of boring, which is why it's not in the edit. Because I was saying, Charlie says it's blatantly Paul. Jazz jumps on the train as well, using very sound logic. He's relaxed, smirking, and over the moon. And he's bang right. Paul is just buzzing all the time. So yeah, I wonder if Jazz is just only now giving them content to actually put in the show, or if Jazz has just always been good this whole time.
Yeah, it seems like he's been biding his time.
Yeah, unlike everyone else who just throws ideas out left, right, and centre, he's probably waited until he actually, suspects someone, which is probably what you should do, rather than just saying stuff for the sake of it. So yeah, I agree. Sound logic, and we already said he was a sound guy last episode. He's I think you said earlier, Jake, best faithful,
and he's clearly not fallen foul of blaming someone just because you don't like him. Good game player. As I said in the first episode as well, that faithfuls forget it's a game and it becomes just a very personal experience, and it's just about who they do or don't like. And a faithful that knows how to play the game. We've not really seen many of those, and Jazz is coming through very strong.
I think he seems like the only one at the moment.
And in fact, that ties into my next point about faithfuls, faithfuls forgetting that it's a game. Because when they're in the dungeon, Andrew says, this is exactly what they want, the traitors. They want to break us. This wasn't their idea. They didn't say to Claudia, can we put 4 people in like a dungeon or something and we'll put 2 of us in with them? And I've got the note again. Has anyone seen the previous series?
Yeah, why? They didn't do dungeon last season, did they?
No, but
Well,
the
they did the
traitors,
trial,
they,
didn't
they come, yeah, it's the same thing as the trial. It's just something, the producers come to them and just like, okay, you got to pick these people. And then the faithfuls find out and they're always like, oh, that is so crafty of them.
Did you hear Andrew say the dungeon's dark, gloomy, and has cobwebs? It's pretty much the worst place on earth. Sheltered life, Andrew. Sheltered life. It sounds like my fucking garage. But before we go into the banishment, I just want a little temperature check from you all about Miles. He hasn't. If he wasn't a traitor, we'd be talking about him like we talk about Meg. He's not committing on anything. I don't know how he's getting away with it. We're not accusing anyone. We're not adding anything to any conversation. I don't know how he's getting away with it.
The only thing he ever says is, oh, I just don't know. I don't know who. I don't know. And he like explicitly says it. Meg just doesn't say anything, which is fine. Well, not fine. Miles just always butts in by saying, I can't think of anyone.
I just don't know.
But when he conducts himself like that on the round table, is that a good traitor play, though?
Well, it shouldn't be, but it's working.
Yeah, exactly what you said, Luke.
My only thing I would say that I was wrong when I was talking about Miles being the strongest faithful, I keep getting it wrong, but about Miles being the strongest traitor is that Harry, I was wrong about Harry at the start, definitely, and Harry is looking very strong. I couldn't pick between those 2 at the moment, but they're definitely both better than Paul, who's fucked it.
It's Harry all day. Harry is playing a masterful game at the moment.
Correct.
We've already critiqued Miles on how he just doesn't say anything. Eventually, people are going to start twigging onto that, and he's going to get pressured to say something. And we don't know whether he can yet.
Well, yeah, they should notice a personality change in him. He seemed to be a lot more chatty but before he was a traitor. People saw him as a potential leader of the group, but now he's like so quiet. So they should have noticed that change.
I mean, Miles' name's been brought up just as much as Harry.
No, I know. I know. But what I'm saying, I'm trying to predict the future here. I'm saying, I've done a prediction. Sorry, but, Harry's playing a masterful game because I can see how his tactics so far can work going forward. He's I think people think he's not that smart, and he's doing what he said. He's acting really dumb. And I don't think people are twigging on that he's actually playing them against each other. Miles isn't playing anyone against each other. He's just riding the wave of Harry and Paul's work at the moment.
Okay, but I have one critique of Harry. And so we've only had one critique of Miles. I have one critique of Harry. Harry looks terrified. In fact, in this clip we're on about here, just before the banishment, Ross, Molly and Harry are all discussing in the kitchen. Ross suggests that a traitor is up here with us, like feeding back information to the traitors that are down there. Harry looks absolutely terrified. Now, I said it at the start of the podcast as well, that in the banishment when Brian's selected, Harry looks terrified. But it's coming across as just he's emotionally affected by everything that's going on. But that can turn, when people start looking at him, they're like, Harry's very affected by everything that seems to be going on. And that's, Johnny's already said, when people are showing emotions, you don't know what it is. Is it guilt? Is it like genuine, just sadness? And when people aren't sure, they can start projecting onto that. Whether it is Harry putting on a show or not, I think it could happen. But I don't know. I can't pick between them, Miles or Harry for me, but Paul's shit.
I think Harry will settle down once Ash is gone. I think the whole Ash situation is getting to him. I think he was a bit worried about talking to her in the turret. I think he's a bit worried of having to see her again at the round table all day. I think once she's gone, he'll settle down a little bit.
Yeah, no, I can see that being the case. Just last thing on that conversation. So Ross has obviously put forward the idea that the traitors are feeding back information to each other. And Molly says, do they want to protect each other? which is an absolutely bang on the money thing to say. But again, for her to have to say that really raises the last point I'm going to make in this episode. Has anyone seen the previous series? If they rule, because I'm worried they are going to rule out everyone who votes for Ash as faithful.
I don't think they could, Jake. Mathematically.
One person doesn't, Zach, and I think he's going to fall foul of not having voted for Ash.
Let's get on to it. Should we move on to the banishment?
Let's move on.
Just Ash on the way in. Maybe it's time for me to really start playing the game.
So yeah, Paul. I think Zach's the first to actually speak in the trial, is in the banishment. So Paul's worried his name might come up, and Zach straight away does bring Paul up, as he said he was going to do all day.
Paul walks in absolutely grinning.
Yeah. I forgot to say, when they were all walking into the dungeon, and it just had like a really dramatic like shot of them all walking into this gloomy dungeon, and then last as Paul comes up, he's just got a big cheesy grin on his face. So I was like, he can't control his smile. Zach asks Paul why Paul thinks he was picked. I like Zach's line of questioning. Rather than accusing, giving people the chance to hang himself. But Paul, fucking hell, plays a blinder with his defence, doesn't he?
Turned it on. He turned the waterworks on, didn't he?
He did.
His defence is just that he has a wife and kid.
How can an amateur do that? A man at that made himself cry.
A man?
But yeah, do you know what I mean? Could you do? I mean,
Can I cry on command? No, I can't cry on command.
I just cry when I think of the past.
Oh, throwback.
As well as, so he says that he's ready to leave, starts crying. It's just all very good. And then he also hints that he thinks Ash might be the traitor, though without naming her. But Step Up Harry to the plate. He is ready to do some naming. He throws her
Defend
under.
his boy.
Yeah, he throws her under straight away. Although his reasoning does not make sense at all. He says he thinks the traitor's playing it smart, and so it must be Ash. Come on.
I adored Ash's retort. Just that would be very convenient if I just condemned myself. It would be convenient, actually. I think that's what we're all thinking.
Yeah, Evie gives her one last chance to defend herself. Ash says she couldn't think straight and defend herself yesterday. So Ash says, well, can you think straight now and defend yourself? And Ash says, well, it's been a long day.
she didn't stand a chance.
She tried to use Paul's line. Paul's already used that one. I think Paul put the waterworks on and said, something along the lines of, it's just been so stressful this day in the dungeon. And Ash just thought, I'm going to fucking use that one.
Just like writing it down instead of a name. Just, that's good. Hey guys, I'm ready for you to accuse me now. But in her talking head, she says, I feel like when we left the conclave last, they would be above ground trying to steer the conversation away from me. And they're totally throwing me under the bus. How the fuck did you not see this coming?
I was hoping she'd survive again after they'd put her under, just to see her go back into the tower, right? And be like, what the hell, guys? Well, anyway, we've just got to trust each other now.
Well, she even defends Paul, doesn't she?
Yes. Oh.
Paul's getting it. She goes, we're looking at me and Paul, and we're ignoring people like fucking Evie. It's the most random.
Crazy.
She should be turning back on Paul, or at least going for someone with heat on them, not just throwing a Hail Mary.
And then she votes for Evie as well, which is just like, no one was going to vote for Evie. Like, when you think you're going to get a lot of votes, vote for someone who's going to get the second highest. Like, what are you on?
It all goes back to what we said about her. The very first thing we said about her on the first podcast, she cannot think on her feet. And it just so happens that it's Evie who asks her, who might be a traitor. And so she just says, you, because you're the one I happen to be talking to right now.
I didn't even make that connection, but yeah, you're damn right.
Yeah. But if I was... she's out and she doesn't choose to throw Paul and Harry under the bus, but if I was one of those two, I would not be leading the charge as much as they are. Because once it's so clear that Ash is getting voted out, how she's not doing a Kieran from last season and giving them a parting gift and voting for Paul or Harry and outing them, basically.
they're lucky, I think, that she doesn't do that.
We are. Well, they're not, because they know she's thick as shit.
I don't even think that's about being thick, though.
No, because a good traitor would have not... A good traitor would just have a bit of backbone to be like, this is bollocks. Like, she's, if anything, she's playing the game like she's not about to go out and like she's going to be here again tomorrow.
I mean, I'm pretty sure the producers will have drilled home to him, don't do a Kieran, don't give parting gift. Do you know what I mean?
No, but she could still vote for Harry and say, well, we've not looked here yet, have we? And then she goes out and everyone says, interesting. But, I mean, I just think via the way she's acted the entire time, no one is going to attribute any of her actions to any semblance of intelligence.
I'm not going to lie, if I was in an Ash kind of situation, if I got betrayed by my traitors, I wouldn't then do a parting gift.
I would.
Easy to say, Luke. Easy to say. She was blindsided by it. I mean, maybe you would have seen it coming.
God, come on.
Luke, you used to say revenge so often when people wronged you.
Yeah, I know, but like, it's the aim of the game. The whole game's about revenge, isn't it? Well, not revenge, about betrayal. And I think it ruins the show. I mean, Kieran, I wasn't a fan of what Kieran did last season.
I wasn't a fan. I don't think he should be able to do it in that manner.
Exactly. And that was in the final episode, which is at least something. Doing it midway through is just ridiculous. It ruins the show. So, if I was a traitor, I'd bear that in mind while I did it. If I got beat by a betrayal, then good game. Do you know what I mean? That's the GG. You know what I mean? That's part of it.
Can you imagine if she wrote on a board Miles, Paul, and Harry?
Or imagine, oh God, if I was a traitor and I just sort of, I don't know, did something like that about 3 random people who weren't traitors, that'd be hilarious.
Yeah, that would be
hilarious.
Yeah, do a Kieran, do a parting gift, but just write Diane.
Oh, that's class. That'd be so funny.
Oh, it'd be too funny.
I've not got much more to add on Jazz in terms of... He doesn't say anything we haven't heard him say all episode. And there's not a lot of interesting things we can really say about Jazz other than just so accurate, uses all his time so well. Just very smart.
Hey, back off. He's mine.
Well, because I was going to follow that up with, so I'm still saying Jazz is my favourite ever retort of, yeah, fair point. When he's accused, just doesn't even argue. Yeah, that's fine. But Jasmine, and Luke, I'm sure you've got something to say about this with your competence kink. Surely, because Jazz's was a bit rogue and smart, but very strange and off kilter, his rebuttal. Jasmine's just very logical. What is it? Yeah, if you did want to throw accusations at me, I urge them to be accurate. Brilliant, love it.
Yeah, big fan of Jasmine.
What the fuck was Johnny's accusation?
I don't know. He didn't say anything, did he?
No, he said there's things. So there was body language and little things I picked up on that I've got a broken brain, so I can't remember. And it's like, right, then why are you talking?
Yeah, it was a load of rubbish, and I think it was an easy way to counter that, wasn't it? Really, there's something that I remember. There's something, but I can't remember what it is. What the fuck do you want me to do about that, man?
You've got to give the credit to Jasmine for the reply. She could have easily done a Brian and floundered, or an Ash.
Oh man, no one was doing a Brian.
Yeah, she just made Johnny look, well, like he had a broken brain.
So they all get a bit emotional about voting for Ash.
Oh yeah, you're right. First tears, isn't it? Isn't it first live tears in person?
Yeah. What did you think, Connor? Charlotte crying in front of everyone.
Oh my God, couldn't believe my luck. Not only did I get live tears, I got it from my favourite girl.
Connor, you're fucking horrible.
It's just a shame that she's not a very good faithful, isn't it?
Nah, she's terrible.
She's just like all the others, saying a load of shit.
Yeah, because see, I think Zach's a good faithful, and I'm so annoyed that he's obviously backed Ash, and people had very good rebuttals to that, saying, so he said, oh, I'm going to back her because she's backed me, and like, that's a dumb reason. And now, because obviously Ash is going to be a traitor, I'm worried that is going to come back on Zach. And I mean, it is weird that someone I think is a good faithful has backed the most guilty looking person I've ever seen on the game.
If you truly don't believe someone's a traitor, you don't have to go for him, but that's a piss poor excuse, isn't it? That they didn't go for me, so I'm not going to go for her. Do you think that will be the? Do you think people will go at him?
Well, especially because he didn't go for Harry, because despite Harry going for him, so he's not done the inverse where he's avoided going for someone that has gone for him, but now he's defending someone that has backed him up. I just think it's going to look guilty. It's going to look like a Hail Mary. I'm going to do what I can to save my fellow traitor.
If I was Zach now, well, I'd be trying to get the point across that if I was a traitor, it would be in my interest to lump on and vote Ash out with you guys, because if I knew, because defending her at that point when it was clear everyone was going to vote her out would do me no good anyway.
And being a political advisor, you'd expect him to maybe have that prepared.
On to what are your guys' predictions then for who's going in next?
So I completely forgot about this. I called the exact episode. Oh no, wait, does it count as me? So I called that Ash would go out in episode 4. Now she's technically going out in episode 5.
No chance. I'm keeping a log of correct predictions, and that's not getting on there.
I think the next banishment is going to be between Zach and Paul, but I think that Paul is going to do a better job of defending himself, and people don't like Zach, so I think Zach is going to go out of the next banishment. Is my guess.
Rick, what do you think?
I am finding it difficult to place myself in their shoes. I'm just trying to think, if I was there, what conclusions would I draw? I'm with Jake. I think they were saying that there could be 2 traitors in there, and they don't think one's Andrew. They know one's Ash, and they know one isn't Meg. I think they're going to start really looking at Paul in earnest.
Called that early doors. I mean, to be fair, the reason I called it was that I thought the crowd would turn, not that Paul would just fly far too close to the sun.
Yeah, we're going to look back, maybe, if we're right, at him putting himself in the dungeon as what got him killed, as what got him banished. Because as well as bringing the extra attention onto yourself, it's doubly bad because you're not up there talking with everyone and, playing the game, getting people off your scent, things like that. It just kind of allows momentum to build. So yeah, I'm with you, Jake.
I'm going Paul episode 6 to be found out.
But then
Luke.
even for one sec, so even for his
Excuse me, let me finish.
the fuck are you on about, Connor? Shut the fuck up.
I'm doing a Miles impression.
All right. So even for his optimal scenario, where Ash got banished, Andrew got murdered, and then Meg, I'd assume he would get banished afterwards. And then they'd find out she's a faithful. Like you mentioned before, he's good at sort of getting the pressure away from him. He's good at sort of talking people out of it. He'd have then, because he's got Andrew with him, and he did that in the dungeon. Andrew's not suspecting him at all. Ash is obviously a traitor. Meg would have been banished if later on. He'd have had all the people that he'd have been able to get on his team will have all gone. Like Meg and Andrew. Meg and Andrew, you might have gotten them to trust him in the dungeon. But even in his perfect scenario, they'd have been gone. So all the conversations that happened while he was in the dungeon, he'd not be privy to, and he'd probably be in a similar situation to what he is now. I think.
Yeah, it was a flawed plan from the start, wasn't it? How long do you think they get in that turret to make the like? I'd want some time to sit and think about all the different like outcomes. Do you think they just have to think on the spot?
I think it happens in the morning, based on some things I've heard. So I don't think long.
No, it's nighttime, Jake. They show the moon right before.
Yeah, those shots can easily be done. The murders happen in the morning, I know for a fact. Yeah, so like, do you know the bit where they sit down in the chair? That's in the morning. In fact, scratch that I've said that, because that'd be quite good to do next time we're talking about a murder. Cut that out.
All right.
But then you'll just leave my point hanging, so you need to respond to what I was saying.
Oh, how long do you get in the turret? Wait, I'll go for it.
Yeah.
Not long. No, honestly, they definitely won't get long because there's only so much filming they can do in a day, so they will have to rush them.
I'm not gonna lie, I don't mind keeping that entire thing in.
Yeah, I found
Yeah, fuck it. Leave it in. That's the magic.
Stop saying that's the magic.
Yeah, he does, doesn't he?
Every time we decide to leave something in, he goes, that's the magic.
That's the magic.
If you've been listening this long and you want to get in touch, we'd appreciate that. You can reach us at Traitor Talk 2024 at gmail.com, on Reddit at Traitor Talk Podcast, or on Twitter, not X, at Traitor Talk Pod. I have always has been Jake, and I've been joined by Luke.
Bye.
I've been joined by Connor.
Goodbye.
And I've been joined by Rick.
Bye. Fucking hell.
Fuck? You're on a stroke.